Hello, welcome today. I am Michael Smith. Welcome to the channel, Awaken to Truth. If you would, please hit that red subscribe button and hit the bell so that you'll get notifications on every new video that comes out. If you're listening by podcast, thank you for taking the time to listen to the audio format. All right, today I want to get into an email that I got this week, an email that I got from the New York Times. I am on the New York Times email list, not really because I particularly care what the New York Times is saying or that I'm overly interested in their viewpoint. But the main reason that I am on that email list is because it sends out these emails and I can just open up the email and I can read a few of the articles. Not all of the articles, but I do get to read a few of the articles, and I am able to do that without actually having to pay for the New York Times. And the reason I like to know what the New York Times is saying is because oftentimes they will signal, they are a signal for the direction of the rest of the propaganda media wing. And you begin to see this through the issues with the virus. They begin to signal things. They begin to, they were constantly talking about masks and they were constantly talking about the jab. And then all of a sudden they said that maybe masks weren't as effective as they thought. And you begin to see the whole narrative turn. So point being, they can begin to kind of signal where things are going, because the New York Times happens to be a powerful element in what I would call the propaganda media, because much of the propaganda media is exactly that. It's reporting some facts, but those facts are spun in such a way that they really are detached from any value or truth to the public. They are essentially propaganda. And so I got an email from them this past week, and it was interesting because the email was stating how that corporate workers and that corporate wages across America are not keeping up the way they should. Okay, fair enough. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to report about. But they blamed it on CEOs, and they particularly blamed it on one CEO, Jack Welch. And they said that because of the way that Jack Welch came in and began to revolutionize General Electric, that many other CEOs have simply taken Jack Welch's approach. And the result is companies are doing good, but the workers are not doing as well as they should be. And they kind of cite some examples for that, and they give some reasons why they feel that that's the case. But interestingly enough, they take aim essentially at capitalism and at one of the, most well-known economist who was in favor of free market capitalism, and that is Milton Friedman. And they quote Friedman, and they say that he said that the social responsibility of business is to make profits. And essentially they are saying in this article that really these corporations need to be doing more than that. They need to be looking out for their workers, and they need to be paying their workers more. Well, wouldn't it be nice if life was just that easy? Wouldn't it be nice if these corporations could simply just pay their workers more and still meet all of their obligations, all of their debt obligations, all of their research and development obligations, all of their pension and 401k obligations, all of their executive compensation obligations, everything that they have to pay for their employees as far as health care and benefits, and everything that they are responsible for as far as providing a good return to their shareholders? Wouldn't it be wonderful if all they could do is, we'll just pay our workers more? Well, number one, obviously a corporation has to try and compete with the wages in the marketplace, or they're not going to get very good working talent. And then they're probably not going to be a successful corporation. But the New York Times, in their ridiculous, faulty socialist logic, have simply stated they just want to be greedy and they don't want to pay their workers. And that's why they're falling behind. And that's why all of corporate America, they say, is suffering from this problem. It's because of the Jack Welch effect. Well, Jack Welch is a very renowned CEO. He's a very respected and in many circles an admired CEO. He's a CEO that I had to do a final project on when I was getting my MBA and study kind of the revolutionary way that he adapted GE to move into that time, the 1980s. And the New York Times is connecting that time with the time when corporate wages started to decline in proportion to other things. And they blame it across the board on the greediness of CEOs and corporations, and Jack Welch was the leader. Now, some of you at this stage might be saying, okay, what does that have to do with anything? Why do we care what the New York Times thinks about Jack Welch? Because the New York Times is beginning to set the stage, I believe, to start attacking capitalism. And this is a crafty little trick, and I'm going to get more into detail in just a moment, but this is a crafty little trick where they will begin to identify a problem, and their solution is something that is only going to make the problem worse. Those on the far radical left have an unbelievable ability to do exactly this. Identify real problems and come up with insane solutions that will only exacerbate the problem that they are supposedly trying to correct. And so I'm not saying definitively that you are going to begin to see a assault on capitalism, but I think that this little signal from the New York Times could begin to signal that that is going to be something that you will start hearing from the propaganda media, kind of an attack on the capitalistic system. Now, why are we seeing declining wages in proportion happen in corporate America? Well, there probably could be many reasons for that. But one of the most simple reasons that this New York Times article failed to mention is that in 1971, Richard Nixon closed the window between the dollar and the gold standard, and there was no longer any kind of responsibility for the U.S. government in how much they could spend, how much deficit they could take on, and how much debt they could continue incurring from those deficits year after year after year after year. What was the result of that? The result of that is that life has increasingly become more expensive. I don't think that you have to think back very far to see that that's the case. The fact that automobiles cost what they cost now, the fact that going to the grocery store costs what it costs now, forget gasoline, which is, that vacillates kind of up and down. And we had similarly high gasoline back in 2008 or 2009, even though I think it is hitting all-time highs now. But forget gasoline and those kind of things. Just look at the price of your car. Just look at the price of houses. Just look at the cost of going to the grocery store. Just look at these basic costs and compare them, if you're old enough, to 20 years ago. Compare them if you're old enough to 30 years ago. If you're old enough, go back 40 years and how much did it cost to buy a luxury top of the line car, and how much does it cost now? Is it that the luxury top of the line car is so much more valuable now? I get it that they continue to improve them, and a car is just one example. But let's take a Corvette for a Corvette. The top of the line Corvette in 1970 versus the top of the line Corvette today, some 50 years later, the price is going to be astronomically different. Is it that the Corvette is worth so much more to the population of 2022 than it was of 1970? Or is it that our dollar is just worth so much less? And the answer to that is our dollar is worth that much less because the government continues to inflate our currency and devalue our dollar. And it also makes the cost of doing business more and more expensive. And it causes business to be able to give less and less to the people that work for that business, because the business has more obligations than just its employees. So if this was an issue that was simply taking place because some CEOs were deciding to, there would be some smart CEOs out there that would say, you know what, we're going to pay more and we're going to attract all of the talent from these other greedy businesses. And it's going to be a short-term investment that's going to yield long-term results. And in the long run, we're going to end up better off. But since, as the New York Times stated, this is a problem that's across the board, that means it's something that goes deeper than simply greedy CEOs. It's something that is fundamentally wrong with the economic structure of the American economy. And I was looking back, and I found it here recently. I did a podcast some months ago, and on that podcast, I stated that the United States, or specifically the Joe Biden regime, was going to need, or that we were going to need to keep up with something, a concept. And I mentioned in that it is modern monetary theory. This was back in 2021. I said, you're going to want to remember that because it's going to come into play over the next 4 years. And modern monetary theory essentially says debt doesn't matter. The government can go in as much debt as it likes, and it makes no difference. We can just keep piling it up. We can just keep rolling it out. And at the end of the day, we're all going to be fine. But the truth is, we're not all going to be fine. The truth is, this is a intricate scheme for governments to steal the wealth and the standard of living from their people. It's a scheme that goes back many, many decades, and it's a scheme that we are now beginning to pay exorbitant prices for, because this is a situation that I don't think is going to get better. And in fact, I think it's going to, at least for a time, continue to get worse. And I'm going to get into that in my next video. The source of this, explain a little bit about this, and kind of uncover what some of the foundations for this are, because all that we really see as we look around today, the average person, is that something is wrong, but there are many, many factors at play that are creating this complex system that is potentially on the verge of breaking down because of irresponsible governments. And in fact, governments that really could care less about the standard of living for their workers and for their people. They're simply worried about continuing to funnel massive amounts of money to the special interest and to whatever else suits their agenda. But those that are paying the price for it are you and me. And we're going to continue paying the price for it. And in the next video, I'm going to go in a little bit more about the foundation of this, how it works, why it's happening, and what we can expect moving forward. So I hope you'll tune into that. God bless you. Thank you for taking the time to watch this, and I'll be back with another video very soon.